Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm Ruth DeFries. I'm one of the co-deans for the Columbia Climate School, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you here today on behalf of Columbia University and the Columbia Climate School. We often hear that every crisis is an opportunity. And today we do have a crisis in the global food system. And we're here today to think about the opportunities to turn that crisis into improving climate-smart future for Africa. Columbia Climate School is thrilled to be a co-partner, a co-host in this event, together with partners at the World Bank, and ACRA, Accelerating Impacts of CGIAR Research for Africa. We have a very exciting day ahead. We'll hear from policymakers, scientists, others to discuss the critical questions facing Africa and agriculture in the face of a changing climate, what is needed to transform the food system. The Columbia Climate School is very proud to be part of this effort. Columbia Climate School, including the International Research Institute for Climate and Society, IRI, are indispensable partners and are very excited and proud to be part of the ACRA project. Thank you for the speakers for traveling, to the participants, both here physically and online. We know this is a very busy week and you have many options, so we appreciate that you are with us here today. Finally, today is about inspiration to change food systems, not just through policy and technology, but through hearts and minds. We will hear about inspiration from young people accelerating climate action. We'll hear inspiration from a chef and social entrepreneur who is championing food and farmers of West Africa. We will hear inspiration from song with music to move us to change. So thank you for joining us. Very much looking forward to this day. Let's get started with the event, and I will turn it over to Dhanush Dinesh, who is the founder of Climate, and he will lead us through the events today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. I see we are in a very big room and it's not full. If you would like to, those in the back, if you'd like to come up front, we can have more like a conversation. So I'd like to encourage you to move up front if you would be willing to do so. It's not obligatory, but please do come and we can huddle around here. But just building on what Ruth said, today is about inspiration and what we want to really do. I've been here at Climate Week since Sunday. And there's a lot of discussions going on the issues that we're facing around climate change, on energy, on COP27, on food and agriculture, certainly. But what we want to do with this event is put Africa at the center. It's a year of the African COP. And with the crises that we face today, with COVID, with conflict, Africa is worst hit. And we need to get that message heard by people sitting at UNGA and elsewhere in the city. And we need your help for that. So I'd like to introduce to you of our colleagues who are behind the scenes. There is Reese. Reese, if you raise your hand. Reese is the comms guru behind this event and comms lead for ICRA. And Amy? There's Amy. Amy, come up front. She's taking pictures. So what they're trying to do is to help us get these messages that are discussed here to UNGA and to the wider community. And we would need your help as well. So anything you're doing, please tweet, put it on Instagram, LinkedIn, use the hashtag ClimateSmartAfrica together with Climate Week NYC, and we'll promote that and retweet it and try to work together to get these messages across. So let's do this together over today and build on that inspiration and share that amongst the wider audience as well. But to set us off on this journey, I would like to invite Mr. Simeon Evi, the Regional Director for Sustainable Development for Western and Central Africa of the World Bank, to set the stage and explain to us what we need to do in terms of financing and investment. Over to you, Simeon. Please go ahead.
I don't know if this one. Yeah.
You can just use that one.
Okay. So this one's put on the pocket. Oh, thank you very much, Danish. Do you hear me well? I want to make sure. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, and also good evening for those connected to our global audience who are here live with us in New York City during Climate Week, and to the distinguished speakers and panelists in this exciting and timely event in a global food crisis, Africa's opportunity for a climate-smart future. I want to extend my thanks to Columbia University and the CGIAR team working on accelerating the impacts of CGIAR climate research for Africa, known by its acronym as ICRA, for co-organizing this session with the World Bank. Let me start by emphasizing the urgency of scaling up climate-smart innovations in Africa's agriculture and food value chains. Agricultural innovation and the use of technology by actors all along the value chain are essential to meet the rising demand for food, build resiliency to the effects of climate change, and reduce agriculture's impact on climate and nature. Increasingly, we need adaptive value chains, and nowhere is this more critical than in the food value chain. After a period of improved food security, the situation, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, has worsened. Since 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated economic turmoil, the ongoing war in Ukraine have disrupted and exacerbated food insecurity, mostly driving up the global food prices, energy, and agricultural inputs. Africa is undergoing an unprecedented food and nutrition crisis. At the same time, climate change risks are increasing and often dramatically impacting agricultural production across the continent and threatening people's livelihoods, particularly smallholder farmers. The world faces a widening research and development spending gap in agriculture. Today, in one half of African countries, research and development spending is declining. African governments must find ways to reallocate public support to research and innovation that de-risk, incentivize, and accelerate the shift toward climate resilient, nature positive, and low carbon food systems. While much progress has been made in making research outputs available to end users, often research remains stuck upstream. In this context, the World Bank is working with the CGIAR on the accelerating the impact of CGIAR Climate Research for Africa project. An important goal of this project is to speed up the transfer of climate-smart agriculture innovations from laboratories and experiment stations into the hand of the end users. ICRA is also dedicated to strengthen the partnerships that are needed to develop, validate, and disseminate the climate-smart agriculture innovations to transform Africa's food system. It is essential to scale up research and innovation for climate action at various levels: global, regional, national, or sub-national. But we also need to engage with a wide range of actors: international research centers, national agricultural research services, the NGOs, the private firms, regulatory bodies, and development organizations. A particular focus of ICRA is to strengthen regional collaboration, building local capacity to promote innovation in agriculture by engaging with Africa's regional economic communities and their associated regional agricultural research networks will be a key enabler to bring innovation to scale. Among others, ICRA is building important partnerships on the continent. It is bringing climate innovation to the World Bank flagship West Africa program, the West Africa Food System Resilience Program, toward building food system resilience and climate resilience in the medium to long term. Across the continent, ICRA is scaling up innovative technologies that change the way farmers are building resilience to climate change. These countries are validating and deploying a range of climate-smart agriculture, climate information system technologies, services, and bundled packages, including off-grid solar, irrigation, and integrated aquaculture systems in Zambia, as an example. In Ethiopia, wheat value chains and small ruminant smart parks that include climate information system, input information, market and product quality. In Ghana and Senegal, bundled drought-tolerant varieties with climate-informed agro advisories for cereals and legumes. In Kenya, sustainable business models for sorghum in dryland seed varieties, and livestock market information system. And, but not the least, in Mali, drought and flood-tolerant rice varieties, improved parboiling kits, and the rice advice tool used by service providers making site-specific recommendations. African universities and research organizations like CORAF, and its executive director is here with us, must also play a vital role in this climate innovation. Everyone here at Columbia University today knows the importance of universities in the global conversation. Experience shows that investing in agricultural innovation, agricultural education is a smart way to spur innovation. We need to invest now in a new generation of researchers and partners that can deliver impacts for people, nature, and climate. We have a great representation of the next generation of climate innovation here in audience. Never have we set ourselves such ambitious goals. At the same time, we are now also uniquely positioned to achieve those goals, since innovation is currently taking place on so many fronts, as we have witnessed in many places. Now is the time to harness and further foster innovation to significantly boost progress for SDG 1, 2, and 13. I want to thank you for all your enthusiasm for this issue. I would like to also challenge the youth and young people in the audience today to focus on this challenge and continue to come up with innovations. The future will rest with all of you. Thank you again for having me. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Simeon, for that really comprehensive presentation on what the World Bank is doing and what needs to be done. And he's inviting you to to this challenge, and I hope the challenge is accepted, to innovate. But I would also invite you to challenge Simeon back, and we can have a discussion later in the panel with the questions that you might have. We're not opening for questions now, but once we've heard from the others as well, we'll have a panel format, and then we will be inviting questions. So if you may just be over there. But one of the key points made by Simeon was also that the importance of collaboration with regional organizations and the CGIAR. So this event is hosted by the CGIAR's ICRA program, but they're working very closely with CORAF, which is the Western Central African Agriculture and Research and Development Council. And we are privileged to have the executive director with us, Dr. Abdou Tenkwano. Dr. Abdou, if you may please come over. And he's going to share with us his perspectives on how we can address some of these challenges.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues of the Climate Smart community, warm greetings to you all gathered here today at the forum at Columbia University here in Manhattan, and also to all who join us online from around the world. 7 minutes, that is the time I have to deliver my message. Time is not on my side, and I need to accelerate. 7 years, that is essentially the time left to 2030, when the world would have eradicated hunger, poverty, and made Earth once more a beautiful and peaceful place to be. Time is not on our side, and we need to accelerate action against climate change. If Greta Thunberg had been here, it is likely that she would have told me, "Shut up, sir. This is not time for talking. It is time for action." I promise I will shut up soon, but let me tell you what action is being done by a program called Accelerating Impacts of CGIAR Climate Research for Africa in Africa, where I come from. So what can I tell you in the time I have left to make us do the most of the time we have left to 2030? Firstly, that I am privileged to be here in this building that I am told was conceived as a space for the community to engage the world-leading research done by Columbia University. Actually, I'm quite intimidated. So what better platform could I dream of to make this argument on the urgency for accelerated action? In its 14th year, Climate Week NYC is the biggest event of its kind in the world, providing a festival of ideas for the biggest challenge that we have ever faced. And what a better theme than the one that brings us together today to look at Africa's opportunity for a climate-smart future in the global food crisis. It is said that a crisis is a terrible opportunity to waste. We see not just one crisis, but an unprecedented convergence of multiple disruptors. But where are the opportunities? The queen of all opportunities, perhaps, is in coming together as true partners to harness the power of connecting hands, hearts, brains, and finances across the globe to make sure our collective impact is felt on ground, notably in Africa, where I come from. I know that the collective intelligence and passion for action that is assembled here and online will be a rocket-lifting accelerator for climate action. Secondly, that Africa can deliver a climate-smart, resilient, and prosperous future for its people, especially the youth, and this is a global responsibility for Africa. We may have faced setbacks due to local and global conflicts, COVID, and climate change, but the people of Africa have the aspiration and drive to transform the continent's agriculture and food systems. Do they have the choice? The Sahel region of West Africa, for example, is prone to drought, but also to floods, which means that we need to do is to capture water when it comes plentifully and use it when there is not enough of it coming from the sky. We can do this, thanks to climate-smart practices promoted and rolled out by AICRA. Africa's climate has warmed more than the global average. Sea level rises from African coastlines have also been faster than the global mean. Continental water bodies are drying up, especially Lake Chad. This has had significant adverse impacts on agriculture, on the agricultural sector, ecosystems, biodiversity, and broader development of the region. According to estimates, at least 828 million people globally, 123 million people in sub-Saharan Africa are unable to meet their minimum food consumption needs right now. This means that 1 in 7 hungry people in the world is an African, and that 1 in 10 Africans is hungry. What does that mean? That if we succeed in reversing the trends in Africa, where I come from, we will have learned on how to do the same for the rest of the world. Thirdly, that I am proud and honored to serve CORAF, an association of national agricultural research systems from 23 countries in West and Central Africa. And I'm here today to argue that despite challenges, African institutions are establishing compelling agendas for action, claiming greater ownership and priority for investment that deliver a climate-smart future. An example is the Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan of the African Union. Support from institutions like the World Bank and global research partnerships like CGR have, can, and must continue to play a critical role in meeting the challenges that Africa faces. Science and research have delivered groundbreaking innovation in agriculture in the past, but to face the challenges ahead, we must make science to make more sense to all. By better connecting global science with the agendas of African institutions and change makers, including young African agricultural entrepreneurs. And AICRA is positioned as a model for groundbreaking partnerships that connects the dots in linking science, policy, and action. And that is how we turn crisis into opportunities for a climate-smart future in Africa. In concluding, my remarks have largely been on the adaptation part, which has its own dose of mitigation, but the world has awakened to the need of accelerating mitigation deliberately, consistently, massively. Is it then possible to dream that when we collectively succeed in so doing, we would reverse climate change? Let us therefore maintain course on accelerating the impact of CGIAR climate research in Africa, where I come from. I had 7 minutes. We have 7 years. And with that, I pass the baton to my esteemed colleague, Ana Maria, and I would like to end by thanking Columbia University Climate School, the World Bank, and ICRA for hosting today's event and for having me be part of it. Thank to you all for your kind attention.
Thank you, Abdul, for a very well-used 7 minutes. I think you conveyed a lot of important messages. If I may just ask you to take a seat up front so we can dive into the panel discussion now. And I would like to introduce each of the panelists. So as Abdul mentioned, we have here with us Ana Maria Lobo Guerrero, who's the director of ICRA. She's also my former colleague and boss, and she's an extremely wonderful person. Come on, Ana Maria. And the second panelist I'd like to introduce is Catherine Harvey. She's the Chief Operating Officer of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens. As Abdul mentioned, one of the key topics we need to address is around youth in Africa particularly. And Ban Ki-moon Center is a youth-based organization and doing really interesting work in Africa and beyond. And I would like to now invite Walter Baitkin, who's a senior research scientist at IRI at Columbia Climate School. And thanks for joining us, Walter. And yourself, Simone, who has already been introduced. Would you please come back on the panel so we can challenge you back with some questions? Yes, please. Do you have the microphone? Yeah, okay. Okay, so now we go to the panel, and Reese is looking for tweets. So what I'm going to suggest is I want to kick this off with a challenge for you. Like I'm going to ask you quick questions, but want answers in about 200 characters so that Reese can immediately tweet it. Okay?
So in terms of minutes, how much is 200 characters?
Maybe 30 seconds.
Okay, half a minute. Talk fast.
So I'll start with you, Walter. So we've heard from Simeon, like it's an unprecedented food and nutritional crisis that Africa is facing at the moment. Can this be turned into an opportunity? If so, how?
The key issue here is building resilience. Building resilience means accessing the best possible information that is understandable, that is actionable, that farmers can understand, policymakers can understand, and can use. That's one thing. The second big thing, second tweet, is...
2 tweets for the price of 1.
Second tweet is we need investment. And for investment, we need business models. Today, climate investments is divided, 80% go to mitigation, 20% goes to adaptation. Africa needs investment in adaptation. And that's a key issue here. And why is it going to mitigation? It's because they have the business model. They created business opportunities. They created 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 1 kilowatt with renewable energy, the cost was $1,000. Today is 5 cents. Why? Because they have the policy for promoting investment. That's what we need. And we heard, you and I heard the other day, that in Egypt, this investment in adaptation is going to be key.
Yeah. So maybe just building on that. So Walter has mentioned that the biggest challenge is around having the business models for adaptation. So Ana Maria, from your perspective, as part of the CGIAR and ICRA, what is missing to get those business models right?
We are missing partnerships.
Yeah.
We need strong partnerships, not any partnerships. We need to be serious about co-generation of knowledge. We need capacity development. We need strategic capacity development so there is sustainability in the activities that we are implementing. And we need scaling. We need to go beyond projects that are successful, are a very small plot. We need to understand how to bring those successful cases to the millions of farmers in Africa that could benefit from those.
Perfect. Reese, is that a good tweet? Thumbs up. Great. Thanks, Ana Maria. And Catherine, coming to you, Ana Maria mentioned the importance of the partnerships, connecting the dots, capacity building. What do you think young people can do? Here, there are many young people from Columbia University. What can they do?
I think we have to support young people and listen to them because they have fantastic ideas, and we have to elevate these ideas and give them the opportunity to share them and to connect across borders and across continents to really make them work. And we've heard from some of our young change makers that have been doing fantastic things, but they lack the support, and we need to trust young people and believe in their abilities to actually use the money or get money and then use it wisely and smartly to actually create the change that we want. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Sounds okay? Any reactions from young people out there? Yeah, there's one thumbs up. Yeah. They know what they're doing. That's good. Okay, so Simeon, so you mentioned the unprecedented food and nutritional crisis that Africa is facing, and you've heard some perspectives on turning the crisis into an opportunity. What do you think? And Abdul also mentioned we have 7 years. Can we build on these foundations to work together over the next 7 years?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Dinesh. For us in the World Bank, we are making a real case for scaling up financing. Okay, between now and the 2030, it's absolutely important. So in terms of financing globally, the World Bank is already spending an amount of $30 billion in areas of agriculture, social protection, food and nutrition globally. But in Africa alone, we are talking about an investment combined in all the sector in the order of $5.6 billion. Now, specifically, we have recently funded countries through regional projects. In West Africa, we just got approved around November of 2021, the first time ever regional program of $700 million for about 4 or 5 countries in West Africa. Okay, and CORAF is one of the recipients of that in terms of execution, okay, of the operation together with the regional commissions. In East Africa, we just got approved in June, $2.3 billion for food system resilience, of which 600 million is going to Ethiopia and some 180 million for Madagascar, and other countries are preparing to access those resources. So that, for me, that's the way, making finance available, supporting countries, engaging your youth is the way forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's really building on what others have said, and I really take that on board. So now turning back to you, Abdul, for your tweet. You've heard about financing, you've heard about capacity building, partnerships, and science. And one question is, like, we had Ruth opening, and we're here at Columbia Climate School, and she's the co-founding dean. And it's the first school that Columbia has created in 50 years or so. Yeah. So so what would you want a university like Columbia or advanced research institutions from other countries to do for CORAF and the network you represent in 23 countries that you mentioned to strengthen those national systems? What would you like to do? Because we also have more than 100 people online. So what's your message? What's your tweet?
Yes, thank you, Dinesh. We have already been engaging with universities in the US, those that are part of the Feed the Future system, to support our centers of specializations. We have agreed that we couldn't do everything everywhere, and that's because we don't have sufficient finances, not sufficient manpower. So it is wise that we assemble that intelligence that is spread in different places into what we call centers of specialization on different commodities. And we see those centers as immersion points for international expertise. But if you would allow me to digress a bit to talk about the youth, because they are very much part of it, in this program, we give a lot of importance to training the next generation of scientists. The future is theirs, not ours. And they say that if we don't do things with them, it is not for them. That's a message that we've been getting across Africa. And we hope that Columbia University and other universities in the US can help us to meet that demand of the youth for capacity building so that they would be the next generation.
Perfect. Thank you, Abdul. So maybe now we can take a bit longer. This was supposed to be the tweeting quick fires, as Reese put it. But just to dive a bit deeper, and Walter, it'll be great to get your reaction on this, but also from your perspective as leading climate scientists, what is the state of the climate in Africa? What is it going to be, and what does it mean for food systems?
So it's a very unfair situation. Africa is responsible for about, I think, 2 to 3% of the emissions of total greenhouse gases. And the African continent is warming up faster than the average in the world. So that's one thing. The other thing that to me is the most important, though, is that the impact of that global warming is creating an increase in the frequency and the damaging of extreme events. And those are the events that really hurt farmers. Yes, global warming is very important to see that the temperature is changing, constantly. But the most important, the most hurt, the most painful for farmers is this increase in extreme events, in droughts, in floods, in hurricanes. And so I think that's what it matters. And this is the resilience that we need to build. And I don't know if we have a chance to also react to Abdul's comment on the universities. Please. But I think that in the universities, we have talked with Ruth a lot about this. We really need a revolution, a change in the culture. We have been working in very specialized issues. We have become very, very good in small issues, and we are not connecting that knowledge. If we really want to inform policy, if we really want to inform farmers, we need to create these integrators. We need to promote that universities create integrators. It's wonderful that science advances in small pockets and become very, very good in small things, but we also need the people that bring the knowledge together and translate it and to make it into actionable information. So it's still scientifically robust, but it's useful.
Yep.
It's actionable.
Yep.
And we need to change. This is something that we have in mind in the new climate school. Yep. We need to bring it to practice.
Yeah, but I also wanted to go back to your previous point. You mentioned one of the biggest challenges Africa will be facing is extreme weather events and building resilience to these events. And at the moment, on different continent, but closer to home for me in Pakistan, we are seeing the floods. It's something we've never seen or experienced. So how does the African continent build resilience to such massive events?
So I think it's a combination. In general, the philosophy is climate risk management. How can we improve the risk associated with climate? And that includes one big part is information, the best possible information at the right time that helps to prepare and to create an anticipatory approach. But then realizing that all the climate-related risks are not manageable. So we need to have instruments that transfer the risk that we cannot manage. And that means accessible financial tools, accessible index insurance. Once that you have that, then a farmer who is normally afraid of investing the technology that they know they need, and they don't do it because it may be a bad season, they may be becoming debt, with the right financial tools, they can invest in the right technology. And so it's a combination of good information, actionable information, translated information, improved risk management, and knowing that there's a part that cannot be managed that needs to be transferred. And finally, the government agencies and the humanitarian institutions that deal with disasters at national level, they can inform, they can become more anticipatory in their action with the right information. Yesterday, we heard an instrument based on a forecast where $9 million were released for Niger to confront, based on a forecast, so not based on a crisis, based on a forecast, to be much better prepared to crises that Pakistan is suffering now. So combination of information, the right financial tools, once that you have that, the right technology, and what we call the forecast-based financing.
Thank you, Walter. That's really rich in content. So I want to go to you, Ana Maria, now, because Simeon also stressed on the importance of investing in innovation. ICRA, how World Bank is trying to mainstream innovation on the whole continent. And Walter's highlighted the key priorities from a research perspective. And ICRA works on climate smart agriculture, climate information services, risk management, and so on. But my question is, how is ICRA different from other research projects and programs? You have told me before this, change happens over time, but transformation is the result of a conscious choice. So I still remember this. But how is ICRA transformative?
So what I believe that it's different from the way that we are doing things in ICRA is that it's the scaling part of it. So ICRA is really dealing with the scaling. And part of that understanding of how scaling happens, it's including these components that I mentioned in terms of capacity building, in terms of partnerships. So it's quite unique for the CGR. This is ICRA, it's not the typical project that we have been implementing for the past 50 years in the CGR. What it's really exciting about ICRA is that it's using all the knowledge that the CGR has been generating in the past 50 years in relation to climate and understanding how to put it in the hands of African farmers. And I think that that's a total shift in the way that we do research in the CGR. And this implies a challenge for us, but it's really adding to what Walter was saying in terms of resilience. We can have the best climate information. We know the technologies. We have been doing research on those climate smart agricultural technologies for decades. It's not lack of knowledge of the technologies, but still we are facing serious challenges. We are not meeting our targets. So why is this happening? And we believe that part of that is that we need to understand what are the root causes that are preventing African farmers from using those technologies, from using that climate information. So why we are not on track for our targets? And this is really understanding how to combine, how to bundle these technological interventions with governance, with social factors, economic factors, things in relation to gender and youth. And it's understanding how all these can enable the environment so that more African farmers can use and really implement these technologies. It was so interesting. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Kigali for the AGRF, and it's amazing how everybody speaks about the solutions. All the panels that I was there listening to, the solutions are clear. Everybody knows. We know what we need to do, even though it's not happening. And then there was this panel, which was called like the panel of the wisdom or something like that. And it was so interesting because the panelists were driving us into the history of Africa and understanding why we are not on track in terms of those targets. And I think that we need to do more in terms of connecting social sciences, economics, really understanding what is impeding us to be able to be more food secure. And that's a research agenda that I believe that we are not doing enough. And what ICRA is doing, it's really understanding those factors in the countries, working with partners, working with regional organizations, but really understanding what are those root causes that are impeding African farmers to build this systemic resilience against climate. I think that's the big innovation that ICRA is bringing into this.
Okay, I'm not sure how many of the audience is familiar with ICRA. I am lucky enough to have worked with you on ICRA. So, but if you can give us an example from ICRA country, like what are you actually doing to identify the root causes and address that and scale, that will be really helpful.
So, for instance, in Zambia, we are putting together this accelerator program, which is working with the private sector, working with the small and medium enterprises in terms of really trying to make the business case for technologies such as solar irrigation, aquaculture, combining this. And what we are making in here, it's really understanding the environment. Because what is happening is that these small and medium enterprises usually don't have the initial investment to make this happen. So it's providing the technical knowledge, but also enabling this mechanism of matchmaking so that investors that believe that this is relevant, that this is a business model, can provide resources for these entrepreneurships. Otherwise, and this is an example of what I was saying, solar irrigation is something that everybody knows that works. But even though we are not seeing that a lot in Africa, why? Why we are not seeing this? What is impeding us for these entrepreneurships to make a business out of this? And so this accelerator program, it's really providing the enable environment so that these small and medium enterprises can really advance in terms of these businesses.
Thank you, Ana Maria. So maybe I'll take that to you, Catherine, now. So like Ana Maria gave a very good example in Zambia of the accelerator program, which is encouraging entrepreneurship. And you're particularly working with young entrepreneurs and young people. How can they leverage on this more? How can we do this more in more other countries? How can we scale it? How can we empower young agripreneurs to take advantage of these kind of opportunities and co-create this?
First of all, let me say, Ana Maria, I love your passion. It's amazing. And I'm so many of the things that came up also in our work that we've done this summer. So over the summer, the Ban Ki-moon Center called young African agripreneurs to apply to become a part of a webinar series to really discuss exactly these kinds of issues. How can we support youth? What are the challenges? What are the solutions that they're looking for? And these very inspiring young people from 6 or 7 different African countries have developed a demand paper that we will be taking to COP in Sharm el-Sheikh to really present to world leaders and saying, oh, this is what the youth want. And lucky for the Ban Ki-moon Center, we have high-level spokesperson that are listened to and whose voices are heard. And this is one of the things that is also something I like to criticize, because we should listen directly to the youth and give them that kind of voice. What I'm seeing in the past, and I think it's shifting a little bit now, is young people were mostly seen as the activists, the disruptors, the noisemakers. And I think this is really, really important, and we needed this disruption. But we also have to take them seriously, as I said before, because they have fantastic ideas. They understand what is going on. Many young people are interested and want to work on agriculture and want to help feed the world, which is what they're effectively doing. So they've come up with, over the summer now in their discussions, with some very interesting points, which goes back to what you were saying in terms of and also what Walter's been saying in terms of managing risk. How can we manage risks for farmers? And that is including how can we get the right kind of information to them? And here again, this is where young people are really tipping the needle, shifting the needle, because they are not afraid of using new technologies. Mm-hmm. They're not averse to tapping into their smartphones, using social media, all kinds of news systems, that often, older generations are still a little bit afraid of this, and how can I use this, and is this really useful, and how does it apply to my daily life? So young people are really open and creative, and they have these innovative ideas. Again, same story as we've heard before, finance is key. We need money, we need access to not only loans, but also grants that are helping people to really manage these risks again and to invest in their farms and invest into these solutions that have not really made it to the ground yet. And so that also includes innovative ways of insurance systems. Not so much, something happens and now, okay, maybe I'll get some money from my insurance, but more thinking about reshaping that system. How can we maybe have some automated triggers for insurances where not only I have to show that I had a damage, but I know the damage is coming, and can I have the money now to actually mitigate and help and manage that kind of risk on my farm? So these are some of the things that the youth have come up with, and there's going to be more detail about this in the demand paper that I don't want to speak too much about yet because it's going to be a big surprise publication.
Great. But I can already see the index-based insurance experts in the audience who might be interested to talk to you. Maybe you can raise your hands. Dan?
I'm just repeating what I've heard.
So this is good for connecting the dots as well. But Simeon, I want to come back to you. And you posed this challenge to the young people here to come with innovative ideas. And I think this conversation is moving really focused on youth, capacity building of young researchers, youth entrepreneurs, youth ideas into the ICA program. So how do you see this mainstreamed in other World Bank projects as well? You are the FSRP project. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how this whole youth dimension can be integrated?
No, thank you, Dinesh, for this interesting question. We did not even start with the FSRP, the Food System Regional Program. I remember a predecessor of that program is called the West Africa Agricultural Productivity Program. And in that program, we helped to train over 1,000 students for MSc and PhD combined today who are contributing to research and development in Africa. And with the FSRP, we are also have a window where we can help to finance, provide opportunities for scholarship for young people to be able to hang on to projects. I can tell you one time I visited one of the regional research centers that we helped to fund under the predecessor of FSRP in Senegal. The center is called CIRAS. And I was quite proud to see there that there were some young people financed under the project who were coming from different countries and applying their knowledge, to understand, how to improve ag productivity for some of these orphan crops like sorghum, millet, and so on. So that is all what it's about. So for us, ag education is quite important. And recently, the World Bank also approved a regional agricultural education project, okay, which is scaling up. I think we are starting in Malawi and Mozambique, and then it will scale up to other countries. Again, the idea there is to help to bring knowledge, especially knowledge in the area of science and climate, into the African universities. Because, believe it or not all African universities are at the same level of information regarding issues of climate. Okay? Some may be teaching, using reference books of 1955 or 65, and so on. Yet things are moving. So we want to be able to help movement to finance, let's say, transfer movement of students across the region through a university that will become anchor universities, and other students from other countries can come to the university and get the latest information knowledge. And this is how we are sponsoring. So across the board, through projects that we're implementing, through financing of ag education, and our education program in the World Bank also has, they have the center of specialization that also is there as helping to finance specifically areas of specific in climate and natural resource. So we all complement each other, and education is quite important. And for us at the World Bank, it is a major area that we want to invest.
Thank you so much, Simeon. So I have two points at this moment. We will slowly be transitioning into the Q&A and discussion point. So you can see on two sides there are two microphones. So if you have questions, you need to come to the microphones. So if I think we can take about 4 or 5 questions. So if you have questions for the panel, please come down there or here, and then we'll come to you. But while you're doing that, then I want to come back to you, Abdul, because you said we have 7 years to act, and you've heard some of the offers from different stakeholders on the panel on different elements that people are offering: the capacity building offer, the research offer, the scaling offer, the entrepreneurship offer, the development offer. Is that enough? What more would you like to see?
I think
Question?
learning from the mistakes of the past, I would say that technology is not what makes things to change. It's important. But unless you have a mechanism of getting them into the communities that need to use them and consider the communities themselves as local agents of change, no matter how good the technology is, the difference on ground will not be achieved. And perhaps that's where we need to learn. How do we develop those social constructs that allow us to go into the communities? And as we go into the communities, there is one word of caution maybe. Farmers are very conservative. They are smart. They don't invest in something that they don't know, even when they see that it is potentially good. So you need perhaps to think of how to bring disruptive technologies in a non-disruptive approach. And that science of penetrating the communities without disturbing them too much is probably one of the key things that we have learned, that we need to learn more. And perhaps that's one of the things that you can help us to develop into a very solid technology.
Absolutely. That's a really valid point. Anna Maria, you're shaking your head, right?
Yeah, I
You're up for
totally
that.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be happy to work on that agenda.
Great. So we are seeing collaborations made. So now we want to go to questions. So please come down and to the microphones. I've solicited a question from Matthew Reddy because we've heard a lot about private sector engagement, and Matthew leads the private sector engagement work of the Global Environmental Facility. So Matthew, what do you think, and what is your viewpoint?
Well, I thank you, Danush, and a very interesting panel to get this discussion started. So my colleagues at the World Bank, we're multilateral funders, the GEF, but we're also very interested in the role that the private sector can play. The private sector is the technology providers. They're the insurance company providers. They have better resources for data, for weather data, and so on. So I'm just want to sort of inquire as to what do you think is the role that the private sector at all scales, recognising, of course, that the farmers themselves are the private sector. What role can the private sector play? And we've got all the big companies working in Africa. All the big chocolate, cocoa companies. They're investing. There's the coffee companies. There's the large brewery companies that are in Africa. Are they really investing in these things? Are you really seeing the level of commitment from the private sector to be transformative in their ambition for climate smart agriculture? And what recommendations might you have for better ways to work with the private sector? Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Lady over there, please.
Thank you so much.
And let's try to make tweet-size questions because there are.
Sorry. I think this conversation sorry for the tweet size. I'm not in the Twitter space, but I think I want this conversation reminded me of the Demba children and how Walter Rodney wrote in how Europe underdeveloped Africa when institutions came to teach the Demba children about the flowers and the atmosphere. they taught them about roses, right? Which is not indigenous to their communities. They need to learn about what's actually happening in their communities, right? So I think the conversation here is even though we are understanding the history of Africa, we're not understanding the present moment of Africa, right? So the future is an illusion, but the present moment is what we have. And in today's time, how are you in your respective institutions holding the markets accountable for what is happening in the continent, right? How is the market also taking the blame and the fault on what is happening on the African continent, namely the neo-colonial structure, the export of all of our goods instead of actually catering to the internal needs of our communities, right? So I think that would be my question. Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you. Johannes, you have a question? Tweet size possible? I'll come to you. We'll get all the questions, don't worry.
Thank you. Yeah, we all agree that ICRA has been very successful in scaling up climate smart agriculture innovation in Africa. And ICRA is a $60 million investment right now. So my question is, what it takes to have this type of consolidated investments to really scale up climate smart agriculture, and especially when it comes to blended finance also, and bring together different partners to work together. We all know that we lack this type of consolidated finance, and I would like to ask each one of the panelists from the different organizations that you're coming here, what do you think it is still needed to mobilize this finance at scale? Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yes, very fast. Thank you so much to all of the panelists. Anna Maria mentioned that we are not on track to meet many goals, and Walter mentioned that a small percentage of the total greenhouse gas emissions are coming from Africa, but Africa is suffering a disproportionate amount of the impacts of climate change. My question to you all is, how can we think about Africa's role in the nationally determined contributions and the upcoming COP, which will happen in Egypt in just a few weeks? Does Africa have a role in this as a demonstrator in some other way? And how do we think about climate smart agriculture in balance of adaptation and mitigation? And how much should we talk about mitigation in Africa? Thank you.
Scaly, please.
Short. My question is for entrepreneurs who are, for me in particular, I'm in Zambia, actually doing work there. What funding opportunities are available, and what would you suggest for somebody who have a proof of concept and wants to take it to scale?
Yep.
Can I ask what your business is?
Yes. So we take food waste and we turn it into organic fertilizer. And our business model is not about selling that organic fertilizer. We're using carbon credits to actually do that so that we can sell it at a very low price for farmers.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Great discussion. Thank you. Just going back to a point which I think one of the panelists had made earlier about what the root causes are and how we can actually tip people to change, right? And it seems to me that we really have to crack this economic nut and just make the economic case sort of independently rational to that smallholder farmer to do, right? Going back to the mitigation example about renewable solar, I mean, 15, 20 years ago, it seemed like something cool. Now people just do it because it's just cheaper and it's the better thing to do, and everybody will do it, So I hear a lot about the climate smart agriculture, regenerative agriculture. I mean, a lot of the thinking is coming up, but quite frankly, it's one of these classic externalities problem, and somebody has to internalize that cost, or the thing has to become the business case just has to make sense for people. Otherwise, we will talk very nicely about it. But if I'm a smallholder farmer in the middle of, Accra or Cote d'Ivoire or somewhere, I'm just not going to switch until at some point I know the market signals to me are making sense. And really, if that is one single thing we have to sort of zoom in on, to my mind, that is really where a lot of our thinking and our collective energies should be on cracking that nut. And then the market will take off. We don't have to worry about it at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, I'm Ashley. So I'm working on Sierra Leone for agricultural project, mainly with lady farmers. So one of the major issue we face is the retention of young farmers in the community. So I just wonder from your past experience, how can NGO work to, retain young people in the rural areas to help them to strengthen their participation in the in farming? Because our lady farmers are all aging. They face a lot of issues, lack of manpower. So how can we really address that? Thank you.
Thank you. And last question.
Hey, thank you. Just building on the question of accountability that was raised, I was wondering, what are your thoughts on making ecocide the 5th international crime against peace, and whether that could be a methodology to hold a means of accountability tool as well as a deterrent, and for anyone that is unfamiliar with the term ecocide, it means simply mass destruction of nature.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So that's a lot of questions, but I just wanted to get all those perspectives in there. But there are a few consistent themes. So one is really around that private sector dimension, with Matthew mentioned, and what was added on. It builds on what you asked, Walter, at the very beginning about the business case. So there is a whole issue around private sector engagement, business case. There are a couple of practical questions for you, Anna Maria, on how can people engage. The question from Sierra Leone and Zambia, for example, in ICRA or similar projects of the CGIAR. There's also around the accountability of markets and the ecocide concept and so on. So there are a few different themes that come on. So who would like to go first? And you can choose one or multiple. Walter, then Anna Maria. Okay, Walter was first.
Yep.
Okay. So I think the first of all, the action happens when the private sector is involved. Action doesn't happen when the government is convinced that something has to happen. And the private sector is involved when there are clear rules, when there are policies that are very clear, when there are business plans that are feasible. And I think we have not been conducting research, very applied research on those issues. What is the enabling environment in policy that will make a company invest more, be more active in that? And that's one thing. The other thing is the question about why should a farmer change practices. And this is another thing that we need to work in, is now especially the younger generation are valuing things that my generation didn't value. Mm-hmm. So my daughters, they wouldn't buy clothes from a company that they know that employ child labor. That's wonderful. That's really good. Well, the same thing is if we can start creating the processes where you certify the environmental value added of the way that some farmers are producing food, and if the farmers receive an extra because they can certify what they're doing, that's a good, even when the farmers are conservative, they see an advantage. It makes sense. It makes sense to do it. It makes sense to certify it, and that will require some work from our side too.
Okay. Thank you, Walter. I'll go to Anna Maria and then come to you, Abdul.
Okay.
She was second. So Anna Maria, over to you.
Yeah, so thank you for the questions. I think that this is great. Just few points. On the one question in here in relation to understanding the present, I would say that it's impossible to be able to successfully address the challenges that we are living in the present if we don't understand the past, if we don't understand the history. And this is why I was saying that it's very important that we understand where we are coming from, because otherwise the solutions that we are proposing are not going to be successful. So you really need to understand the past to be able to say something meaningful for the present. And the way that we are doing this in ICRA, it's not a bunch of scientists from the CGR going into these 6 focal countries and then prescribing what to do. I mean, we are very away from that model because we have seen many times that has not worked. It's really the partnerships, working with the regional and national organizations, and they are the ones that are really driving the agenda. The priorities, what is missing? What do we need to do more? What do we need to do less? So I think that the approach, and it's very much where the CGR is going, it's really, we are facilitators somehow. We have capacity of deliver some type of knowledge through our expertise, but at the end of the day, the people on the ground that are going to be the ones implementing these things, they're the ones that know what is missing and what needs to happen to make the change that we would like to see. So I think that that's important as a clarification. In terms of the role of the private sector has a very important role in terms of scaling. I refer to scaling many times, and that's the way that we see that the private sector can be fundamental if you think about this theory of change. And one of the things that is lacking from the private sector perspective to be able to scale, it's lack of bankable projects. And I think that Walter was referring to that. And I connect this to the question about the economic side of this. I totally agree. I mean, why I would change to do something if I don't see any profit coming out from it? But the fact, and this is what is interesting, is that we know that there are practices that are profitable and at the same time are building resilience, are good for nature, are good for people, are good for diets. And those are the ones that we need to concentrate. And from the research side, we need to be able to provide the information that it's very clear, saying the private sector, here are your bankable projects that you are looking for. So we need to be able to have that information ready. We need to be able to connect because there's willingness from the private sector. If this information is available, many companies are eager to put resources into investing in these kind of things. So I think that's where we believe, and I'm speaking from the CGR side, we have a role to play in terms of providing the relevant information, the relevant analysis, the relevant economics behind those bankable projects so that we can really connect the two pieces and then see all these benefits. We don't have to name this climate smart agriculture or regenerative agriculture. It's something that makes sense for the farmers that are implementing it at the end of the day.
Thanks, Ana Maria. Abdul?
Yeah, I want to address the issue of accountability of the market in a way. And I'll take it from the angle of climate smart varieties, for example, which we know are one of the easiest mechanisms to address climate change in the communities. But the vehicle for that improves seeds of the varieties, or the seed business itself. Now, if you look at West Africa, if you look at the ECOWAS region, the Economic Community of West African States, 15 countries with different laws, different policies for seeds. And it makes it impossible for someone to be able to reach the market of that region that is 400 million people, more or less, because of fragmented policy. So CORAF has been tasked with the responsibility of harmonizing policies so that if you are able to follow that rule that has been developed centrally and that has been adopted in the different countries, then it makes sense for somebody to be in Nigeria, produce seeds, and move them to Sierra Leone, for example. But even when you have harmonized policies, you still have the problem of roadblocks that are not official. You know what I'm talking about. And how do you deal with such issues? We faced an issue like that when countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea were hit by Ebola. They could not grow the crops and they could not harvest seeds. And after the health crisis, they would have had a food crisis. So we were tasked by ECOWAS to get the private sector to move seeds from different countries into the communities that were affected. And we faced roadblocks, many of them. What did we do? We learned from that we need to work with these people who are not necessarily in the agri sector, we're talking about customs, for example. They are not part of the system usually, so we need to implicate them in the process. And as we do that, we also use what I would call peer pressure from the media. We have WhatsApp everywhere these days. If you can just monitor the number of roadblocks and give that information on real time to those who want to move seeds from one place to another, that helps to put a lot of pressure on those who are blocking so that they would unblock and make the process more fluid. And those reports are given to the heads of state when they meet, because there is one head of state who is a champion for monitoring that on behalf of others. So that's the multilateral accountability. It's far from research, but it makes possible to make research make sense.
Yeah. Thank you, Abdul. Yeah, so I'll come to you, Catherine. Now, I would also like to add, if you could also address the question from Katie about COP27 and the Africa COP. I know Secretary General Ban Ki-moon convened a ministerial also with Egypt. So it would be great to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Thank you. I have so many thoughts. So first of all, on the questions on the private sector, we have to keep in mind that we have a climate finance goal of $100 billion a year, but that is a combination between donor funding, governmental funding, and the private sector. So there is actually some demand on the private sector to start investing in climate smart climate financing in general. So that's the one hand. On the other hand, if we're looking at companies and we're looking at large private sector, the Nestle's and the whoever is out there, they should start paying their delivery agents along the entire value chains a living wage, so that they can actually create and go beyond what they're doing right now, which is getting as much profit out of it as possible. I know that the example came from energy, and that was my previous life. A lot of energy access renewables. Let's not forget, none of this happened overnight and with just one one silver bullet solution. This came with the enabling environment. It came with government-led incentives. It came with international cooperation. It came with risk mitigation from governmental funding. So it takes a lot of people and to pull that wagon into the right direction. And I think we have to start doing this in the climate smart agriculture space as well. Now, if we go to the COP, just really quickly, we had just had a ministerial session with all women ministers and Ban Ki-moon, where we discussed specifically the goal on adaptation, and also the pledge that was made at the COP26 around doubling the adaptation funding that is necessary. I mean, ideally, it should be 50-50 between mitigation and adaptation. We're nowhere close to that, but at least doubling the funding for adaptation, and that is one of the big goals we want to see at the COP this year, to actually make that reality, to start putting the money where it needs to go, which is adaptation, specifically in the Global South, who have not contributed at all or very little to actual climate change, but are now facing the biggest problems and issues and are having a very hard time adapting to that. And we're not even going, this is just adaptation. We also have to start talking about loss and damage and all these kinds of things. So it's a huge challenge for us to get that adaptation goal to a point where we can actually finance the right kind of projects and support, especially the Global South in that.
Thanks, Catherine. So we're going to close the panel now. But Simeon, I wanted to give you the closing last word and reflections on the questions, but any closing reflections?
Yeah. No, I think there were many interesting questions, but there are three of them that relate to each other and dealing with the market signals, dealing with the private sector contribution, and so on. I want to say this. First of all, you can see that if the market was functioning quite well, the issues of climate, would not be one. We have many cases, some market failures there. This is why we need government intervention. We need public interventions. So at the World Bank, For example, in order to be able to identify priority areas to support countries' NDCs, we are doing what we call, upstream report that we call country climate development report. And just Monday, we launched one for the G5 Sahel, where we identified that for adaptation and mitigation between now and 2050, $80 billion will be needed just for the 5 countries of the Sahel. Just for adaptation, it's about 30 billion. And if you want to do it between now and 2030, it's about $16 billion needed. Public sector alone cannot finance that. That's where the private sector role becomes quite important. And we have examples of sectors where the private sector can actually contribute significantly. I take one sector, one example, okay? Let's say for countries producing cocoa, as an example, like Ivory Coast, Ghana, and so on, that are exporting the raw cocoa to overseas European countries, America, and so on. And a lot of this cocoa is derived from deforestation, therefore contributing to emission and so on. How can we, the company that are buying those products are private companies, okay? What role can they play to help to finance, okay, adaptation and mitigation measure for smallholder farmers so that they can produce sustainable cocoa? That's an example of where private sector can come in. Another area, which is not agriculture, but which is in the area of, let's say, disaster risk management, like coastal, we see a lot of coastal degradation along the coast. What's happening along the coast? Hotels are being built around that, like in Senegal, Sali, okay, Assini, Cote d'Ivoire, some other places, Lomé, and so on. The private sector can contribute to adaptation measures to help build resilience of the economies of these countries so that they can also benefit, okay, from, okay, the stabilization of their infrastructure when you have, climate impact or when you have disaster and so on. So all this, all in all, the private sector has a particular role there. And if you want to count only on the market signals, it will not work. That's why we need regulation. We need policies to be put in place, because if you want to count only on the market, you will deforest. In fact, when we do modeling, we do those analyses, the biggest return is obtained when you clear more forests, if you do CG models. But when you put in constraints related to that, then you take it into account. So market intervention is important in this case to be able to do climate. This is what I want to say. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Simeon, and thank you so much to the whole panel. I think we'll conclude the panel discussion now, but this is not the program is not over yet. We're now going to move to the next part of the program, so you can return to your seats. Next part, yeah, round of applause for our panelists. Is going to be led by Ishmael Sunga, the CEO of the Southern African Confederation of Agriculture Unions, with Chido Mapemba, the African Union's youth envoy. And after that, we have a celebrity here amongst us, Chef Pierre Ten. You made Bill Gates cook yesterday. How was that? It was quite fun. Yeah, was it tasty? I had your salad after that. Oh, you did? It was really nice. So there are some exciting things coming up. So please stay here and join us on that. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
I was there yesterday.
You were there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
great.
he's a good sous chef.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shall we start? Can we start?
I just learned that we are of the same nationality. We just met now. And I was just thinking that we might as well conduct the conversation in our local language, which is Shona from Zimbabwe. Yeah. Thanks everyone for being here. And it's a pleasure for me to be invited to moderate this short session. It's a total of 15 minutes. It's about 10 minutes of me engaging with her. Another 5 minutes of you guys asking questions. Hopefully they will be tweetable, as Danush was saying earlier on. My name is Ishmael Sunga. I work for the Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Unions. I represent more the farmers and not the business. There's a lot of talk about businesses and less about farmers. But quite fascinating also to hear the conversations earlier on around the youth. And the youth is one of my passions. But it's interesting that if you look at things from the eye of a youth, perhaps the vision that you see might not be the same as that you can see as an elder person or an older person. Maybe you see a mirage, maybe you see much more reality. Maybe where we are saying the opportunities, you don't see opportunities, or the other way around. These are some of the conversations that we are going to have with Chido. Perhaps, without stealing a lot of your time, because you have to be doing most of the talking yourself. The question really, I'm not sure they've been introduced before because I came in a bit late, but if you haven't been introduced, just say a little bit about yourself, including why you became what you are, the African youth champion. Over to you.
Thank you, Ishmael. First of all, it's such an honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Chido Mpemba from Zimbabwe, and currently I'm the African Union Chairperson's Youth Envoy. And what that means is that I'm representing the voices from our 55 member states of all youth in Africa, ensuring that what they have in terms of wanting to champion within Africa is heard by our leaders, representing them at different forums, including the AU Head of State Summit and various platforms where we get to engage with policymakers, but also from another angle, representing the African Union chairperson to the young people. And this came about to ensure that we start incorporating young people within the leadership structures of the African Union, making me the youngest diplomat who's sitting in the chairperson's cabinet. And as a result of this, part of the priority areas that I'm currently focusing on also include on climate change, which is something I'm very passionate about because previously I trained as a climate reality leader. But in addition to this, economic development, because previously I worked in the private sector too, and I found that there's a way that we can interlink when it comes to economic development, social development, a multi-sectoral approach, and also building in with regards to private sector, public sector, and the young people themselves. Now, why I became a youth champion is, being a young person myself, I realized that there's just so much that we can do and contribute to the development of Africa. And we should never underestimate the impact that we make within our communities. I mean, I started off by being a volunteer within my community in Zimbabwe. I mean, whilst I worked in the bank, which is more in risk management, including climate risk, but I really had the passion to serve and to volunteer. And as a result of this, I'd go to communities. One of the projects that we worked on was on planting trees within orphanages. So these were planting fruit trees as a result of, trying to mitigate deforestation, but at the same time, feeding communities. And from there, I also gained further interest and, continued with that voluntary work, which led me to the role that I'm in now. It's a rotational role. This role rotates per region. So currently it's in Southern Africa. It won't come back to Southern Africa in 8 years because we also need to give the chance to youth within the various regions to also form part of the chairperson's cabinet. So I could go on and on. There's just so much I could share, but I think for now, for the sake of time, I'll end here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that very good introductory remarks. I mean, being youthful is I think is a big thing, and also being the champion is a big thing. And I just wondered, because there's this youth dividend, or the demographic dividend they're talking about, which is making you represent quite a large constituency. I just wondered, climate-wise or climate smart-wise, how you would gauge the smartness of the youth in climate smart. Do you really think that the youth are climate smart? Are they climate conscious? Or just give us from the eye of a youth person.
Okay, personally, I think they are. I think we're really championing a lot as young people. And I'm even excited that when it comes to COP27, for the first time, there's going to be a youth and child's pavilion that has never happened before. For the first time, we actually have a COP27 youth envoy who's also here on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. And just to also just share a bit, so, you know, I mean, recently we have an initiative, which is a joint initiative of the World Bank, UNICEF, and the African Union, which is the Africa Climate Mobility Initiative. And as part of that initiative, within my office, we're focusing on the youth angle. And we've actually just recently rolled out an innovation challenge. And this innovation challenge is for young people to also bring their voices and share with us ideas when it comes to climate mobility. And as a result of this, they'll also be receiving financing to upscale their businesses and also an opportunity to join the pavilion that we will have on climate mobility on the sidelines of COP27. Now, in addition to this, this will also involve ensuring that in terms of the decision, actually choosing these innovations with young people involved. So we're even making a call for a selection committee for young people to be involved in that selection. And on top of that, also looking at a fellowship, which we'll be rolling out as part of that, you know, ACME, which is a joint initiative of the World Bank, UNICEF, and the African Union. Having said that, you know, we're creating that enabling environment because we found that youth are so hungry, super hungry to ensure that, you know, they're also involved in the change of Africa. Whenever there's a rollout of anything, be it an innovation challenge, an opportunity just to join anything, within even just one day, would receive at the maximum of at least 500 applications coming in a day, which shows that youth are ready. We're here to also provide the solutions for the Africa that we want to build, a climate smart Africa too.
In other words, I heard a lot earlier on, and I suppose you also captured that there's a lot of opportunities, and someone said, don't put a crisis to waste. Is that the same attitude, the same mentality that the youth have? And if so, what one or two key opportunities do you see from the crisis of climate change?
Okay, I think one of the key opportunities that you'd see from the crisis on climate change is innovation. You know, there's always a way to innovate in whatever mess that we find. But we're also lobbying and advocating that even when it comes to policymakers, and when it comes to private sector, and when we get on these platforms, that we also need to ensure that we put our money where our talk is. Because you find that most of the time we have young people working as volunteers. You know, it takes a lot to be seen as professionals. We're also professionals in our own respective rights, but majority, you find that 80% that are working on various initiatives, including climate change, work as volunteers. And then when it comes to access to funding, because it's such a small pool, you know, now we're trying to bridge the gap to ensure that there's more collaboration versus competition, because there are not so many opportunities that are out there for us as well.
Okay, thank you. And if one looks at COP, there are a lot of expectations that many players, different actors, some of them conflicting, have. What would be the key ask or the key message that you really want to be listened to by the powers that be at COP?
Okay, I think obviously I'm quite biased. I mean, being the youth envoy for Africa. And for me, the key message is let's fully get young people involved. Let's really get them involved, including even when it comes to delegations. I mean, we recently had the COP27 preparatory meeting in Egypt. And, you know, what we've been lobbying for, even when it comes to the group of negotiators, is to say, can we have young people form part of your delegations? Number one. Number two, can we ensure that when you speak about funding and financing, young people are fully involved in that process too, and they also have access to funding?
I just also wondered, there's this thing about Egypt being Africa's COP, and youth from Africa as an example. Do they also see it as their COP, Africa-wise, that is?
Definitely, it's something that we see as our COP, Africa-wise, and we're super excited. I mean, we have the COP27 Youth Envoy. I'm so excited. I'll be meeting with her just tomorrow. And, you know, just to join hands together with various youth groups as well as our COP as young people coming from Africa. But not only that, we also believe in global integration and global cooperation. So we're also working with other young people that are not necessarily from Africa, but are also friends of Africa, and to see how we can ensure that even on the global platform, we do have solutions for development, not only in Africa, but across the globe.
And I think over the years, the engagement of the youth at COP, different COPs, has been gradually increasing. And I feel that it's actually, the intensity is much higher. But I just wondered whether there's going to be significant difference between the youth voices in Egypt than there were in Glasgow, as an example.
Okay, well, it's something that we're hoping for. I personally think that, at every COP that's going to happen, it's an opportunity, to make sure that we increase when it comes to voices for youth, and we develop better, and we also learn from the previous COPs too. So I think even moving forward, when we have the one that's going to be happening, next year in the UAE, it's an opportunity to ensure that there are further voices that we incorporate for young people when it comes to COP.
So in other words, you're very positive, or maybe let me rephrase, you're positive that your voices as a youth is increasingly being heard, and you can see the tangible benefits arising out of the advocacy work that you're doing?
Yes, definitely. Of course, there's still more that can be done, but we're looking at, for example, as I mentioned before, for the first time ever with the COP27 Youth Envoy. And for us, that's progress to say, okay, this has never happened before, but now you're showing us that, there's more efforts that's coming in to ensure youth are fully integrated. For the first time, we're going to have the youth pavilion at COP27. Again, I think this is progress. And when you look at next year, I'm sure there'll be more that will be coming.
Thank you. I mean, to me, it's so refreshing to hear that the youth are seeing the future in similar eyes as some of us who are not so youthful, maybe even much more brighter, and they're seeing opportunities from managing the crisis. And I suppose maybe the opportunities they are seeing are not necessarily the same as what we see, but the point being that there is hope, and we're talking about the future, and we're talking about the youth. If we invest much more in the youth in all different ways, financial or otherwise, it is going to have a major payback. In fact, the cost for not investing in the youth is going to be much, much more expensive than the cost of actually investing in them. So I would urge all the different players, policymakers, researchers, let's have a new generation of youth climate smart farmers, climate smart agripreneurs across the entire chain. And this is my call, and I hope that you are going to be very successful, which I don't doubt at all, at the next COP27 and beyond, in championing the voices of youth in this very crisis, which is a massive opportunity, as we heard. With those remarks, maybe let me invite, it's a very short conversation. Any questions, 5 minutes, and Danush said tweetable for her. Not necessarily questions, it could be contributions, just a brief conversation around her remarks and my summary. Thank you. Yes, madam. Maybe you could line up by the mics on the sides, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a question about COP, actually. I was just wondering if there are mechanisms in place to fund and support young people to go to COP this year, because we know that one of the major concerns is, yeah, it's a COP for Africa, but everything is so expensive, potentially even more than in other locations where it's been in the past. So are there mechanisms to support, especially African youth, to actually show up at COP? Like, are there mechanisms to fund them to go?
I'll just add another question for you that is linked to that. Being at COP is one thing. The processes leading up to COP are maybe even much more fundamental. You don't have to show up at COP. As long as you have been involved in the governmental processes at the country level and in the regional level, then the voices has been speculated through. But just to understand also whether you have been on the ground apart from being in Egypt. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. In terms of the mechanisms, I believe that there should be done, including even accountability and responsibility that will come from the private sector, from development organizations, as well as from the member states. Having said that, within the framework I spoke about when it comes to the Africa Climate Mobility Initiative, as part of that, we will be funding young people to go to COP. Part of my role as well includes playing that facilitation role, where I then facilitate with various organizations, including sponsors and funders, to also be able to bring more young people within COP. So that's also cool to say that if there's any organization that would be interested and willing to ensure that we bring more young people to COP, then we'll be happy to work together in that regard. I mean, it goes to the same with the United Nations General Assembly that, we've managed to negotiate and have a number of young people being represented from Africa that are currently here and also having conversations on climate change too, leading up to COP27. Yeah.
Yes, Ana Maria.
Thank you very much. This was great. I really enjoyed listening to your answers. So for me, we are in a university. What is the role of universities and in general research centers in terms of connecting more with youth to be able to help you? How can we do a better job in terms of connecting, co-developing information, or what else can we do? Because I do believe that you are the future. And if we are not part of that, if we cannot contribute, then we are not doing our job.
Thank you for that question. It's interesting because I believe that research is very, very important, because when we research and we have data, then we know how to prepare for the future too. And you find that, I think previously on the panel, there was, I think someone who mentioned about, going with a paper declaration for our leaders or member states, which is very amazing. And within our office, we've also been doing the same in various platforms, including at our humanitarian summit. We had a section on climate change where we're making these demands to our leaders. But now we're looking at how can we go beyond that, because it also needs to be monitored, it needs to be evaluated, and we can support them through that research. And research, I really loved when you mentioned as well, when you're speaking, to say that pretty much not all size fits all. You also need to look at country level and be able to domesticate whatever fits in within that country. And I believe that that's where you can come in with that research. How can we ensure that we have research that's country focused? And when it's country focused, it also guides the countries in terms of implementation, including in terms of agriculture, smart agriculture, and climate smart. So I think there's really scope for that, because for us to be able to make informed decision, it has to be based on research, right? So it's very important that we do so. We bring young people on board. Being the largest demographic we have in Africa, I'd really love to work with the XG in future, and hopefully you can have that conversation on the sidelines of this. Yeah.
Thank you. There's another question coming in, but as you come in with your question, I'm tempted to react to the conversation here, and I tend to think that the youth just go and do it, and without so much research, and it's sort of their guts that tell them what to do. And here I am listening to you saying that you really appreciate research. Research informs action. I just wondered whether that is so typical of the youth or not. But we'll take the next question. Just a comment, perhaps. Yeah.
Hello, thank you so much for an interesting conversation. My name is Michelle, and I'm from the Columbia University Sustainability Management Program. And you mentioned that we need your support and access to funding, and also your ways to go to you guys and ask for help. And I'm just curious, like from your side, what are the things that you need to actually communicate better with us, and how can we actually approach you guys to ask for support? Because for me, from going to all these Climate Week events, I find it kind of difficult to email or people like you guys who are higher up in the organization, and I'm not sure how to actually talk to you. So how do we make this better for both of us?
Okay. Honestly speaking, I think even as just young people, for me, I've had an open policy, culture. So you find that when it comes to being able to interact, including even on social media, I actually respond directly on social media. You know, my team, I'm joined by a number of my colleagues in this room, and they're always laughing because every time I'd find someone on social media who reaches out and says, oh, guess what? I'm in New York. I'm also attending the UN General Assembly. And if they're a young person, I'll then immediately call them to say, okay, so join us. We're at this, at this venue, come and join us. We're going to be doing this next. And the next thing, my team is asking, okay, who's this? I'm like, oh no, I spoke to them on social media an hour or two ago. So definitely, I think, this is just a position at the end of the day, and it's just a title, but it does not mean that we are, are not accessible to young people. That's the role that I have to ensure that I talk to the young people. So on social media, we're very much available. On email, we're very much available. On WhatsApp, we're very much available. However, having said that, there's also a balance, right, to that, because you find that at the moment, for example, I'm engaging in this conversation, and I've probably have other panels for the rest of the day. So at times we might not be able to necessarily respond there and then, but we are aware and will respond. And if there's anything, for instance, when it comes to opportunities that we're able to also link young people with, then, we're always happy to play that role. Yeah.
One more question, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the amazing conversation. My name is Habab Mustafa. I'm one of the Sudan youth delegate. Actually, I've become interested in climate change recently, thanks to my friend. Actually, I'm a pharmacist. I come from a medical background. So my question is for you. Maybe you can give me an advice on how am I, like, when I go back to Sudan, or as I mentioned, I'm a medical background. So what actually can I do to participate in the climate change, or how can I find it an opportunity for me as someone who is like you can say, away from all of this, and I don't have the access to much information, and I'm sure that a lot of people like that. So how can I do that? Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, have an event with the Sudanese youth coming up on Mondays. I hope to see you there if you still be around. But to answer your question, maybe I'll answer it with a personal story. I mean, from my own background, interesting enough, my degree was in social sciences at the University of Cape Town. Then I joined the banking sector, and the banking sector was involved in risk. And then suddenly, because there was just so much talk about climate change, and I became curious to say, okay, this is where the world is going. I need to understand what is climate change, what opportunities are there within that space. And I started researching. This could even come as, researching on Google. You can even research to say climate change opportunities, short courses. There's so many platforms as well that offer free short courses online to learn more. And that's how I started. And, eventually applied for a climate reality project initiative, which is actually under the World Economic Forum, where, they had a program that was happening in Los Angeles. At that time, I still worked in the bank in risk, but not even covering climate risk. But I was just like, what, this would be interesting. I mean, of course, I had to speak with my principals, the Standard Chartered Bank, and I said, listen, I'm going to the States specifically to learn about this course, but now finding a way to say how it would be of benefit to my organization. I said, I noticed that I'm working on risk, working with corporates and all that stuff, but then this is where we're going. I can come in and incorporate, as we're now building on our climate risk models, because we're even in the beginning of building our climate risk models. And from there, I went back to the bank and I used that knowledge. But again, looking at the passion that I had, I was like, okay, besides using it within this passion under climate risk and climate financing in the banking sector, how can I go out there to communities and ensure that I also give back? So it starts with passion, research, and do not even underestimate what you're doing now. It might not be related to climate change, but trust me, there's always a way to interlink your passion and find a way to integrate it within the space that you're in. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Chido, for those inspiring words. I like your enthusiasm. I like your understanding of the subject. And I like your foresight. And that's about youth. I mean, the youth see the future and they see opportunities. Sometimes they don't even see climate change. They don't see disaster. They see opportunities, which is the right spirit. Let's sell and continue to sell hope and continue to invest in hope for the youth. With those words, I say thank you once more, and thank you to the organizers. Over to you, Danish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ishmael. And thank you, Ido. Really appreciate it. Really inspiring comments. And yeah, really looking forward to following up. I have one. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for that really nice conversation. And I would like to introduce our next guest, Chef Pierre Tem. Chef Pierre Tem is a chef, author, social activist from the Terenga restaurant. We will also have lunch from Terenga restaurant and Yolele. But I actually saw Chef Pierre yesterday, and he was teaching Bill Gates how to cook, right? That was pretty impressive. And then he cooked this really nice salad, which was a combination of different ingredients from West Africa and from here. And it was really nice fusion food, but which is also climate smart. And we're hoping that you can enlighten us on climate smart opportunities. What does it mean?
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And yes, I'm a chef from Senegal. So this journey is really taking me places that I didn't expect. It wasn't planned. It all came organically. Started cooking in the early 90s in New York City. And the city was already being called the food capital of the world. And after having worked in French, Italian, American restaurants, I realized that Africa was a big absent of that world. And to me, this was not acceptable because I come from Senegal, and that's a country that has an amazing food culture. We eat fresh food every single day. My mom would go to the market every day. The fish that I eat is either caught today or yesterday. It's not frozen. It's just amazing cuisine, and an ancient cuisine too that's been passed on from generation to generation. It's a gender-based cuisine as well. It's women activity. So I found myself in a quite odd place here in New York City, in a place where most people in the kitchen around me were actually men. So this was my first cultural shock. But in that quest to introducing the food culture of my origins that I saw as an opportunity in New York City, because I knew people would be ready for that. All these other cultures were here bringing their cuisine. And it was not right for me that the only time that food was represented, it would be in mom and pop restaurants, just catering to the immigrants community. I think food is an opportunity to bridge cultures and to connect people. And this is what was my goal and my quest. But in doing so, I also found myself in places quite unexpected, including having Bill Gates as a sous chef yesterday. But much more than that, much more important, the quest took me to small farmers, because I realized that as I was presenting the cuisine, I left the restaurant I was working at, started a catering business. That catering business became my first restaurant in early 2000 in Brooklyn. At the time, Brooklyn wasn't the gentrified Brooklyn that it is now. It was quite of a pioneering restaurant, and that restaurant became a destination. That destination really inspired me to write my first cookbook, and that cookbook was all recipes from memories and recipes from my mother and my aunts, recipes from the women of my family. And I couldn't really even find a publisher for that cookbook because no one really believed that there was an interest in African cuisine in the audience, until I found one publisher, Lake Isle Press, a beautiful woman, Hiroko Kifner, who took a chance with us. And the book came out. I traveled to Senegal with a wonderful photographer, Adam Bartos, who documented those moments. And I really wanted those moments to be really telling the story, because I see myself as not a cook or a chef. I'm a storyteller. And this is what really cooks are. We are storytellers. And I think even beyond us, our plates are telling a story. The plates telling you the story of the ingredients. How did these ingredients get to this place here? How did they come? How did we really manage to master how to grow them, how to grow this rice and these grains over generations? And that takes you all the way back to thousands of years. And this is really fascinating when you look at this from this angle. So I wanted the cookbook to tell that story. And we went all the way to the village of my parents and spent time with the grandmothers and the aunties. And the book was so well received. It became a finalist of the Julia Child Award, which was amazing for a book that no one believed in. And the publisher, of course, wanted a second book. And the second book, I really wanted it to also continue telling a story, to be the continuation of the first cookbook. See, the cookbook was about my family, the intimacy, and that time. So the second cookbook, it was about where are those ingredients are coming from. So I had to go even deeper to the rural area, spend time with the farmers, spend time with the fishermen, spend time with those people and tell their stories and how the challenges that they were facing. And during those travels around Senegal, I ended up in a place called Kédougou, deep in Senegal, an area that is quite fascinating, beautiful, connected to Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and Mali. But that area is also one of the poorest area in Senegal. It actually is the poorest area in Senegal. And what is fascinating in that area is the migration. You must have heard of the migration that's happening right now in Africa, in West Africa in general, where all the youth are leaving and they're trying to make it to Europe. They're trying to make it to Spain. Actually, in Senegal, Spain is the destination. But the way they are living is quite scary. They're taking dugout boats from fishermen, and half of them don't make it. They try to cross the Sahara. Half of them don't make it. Why are they leaving? They don't have any opportunities. They don't have any jobs. And myself, I started to wonder whether there was a way to create a source of income for those regions like Kédougou, a way to bring jobs, economic opportunities with what we have right there. And in that quest, I found something that really was fascinating. When I arrived in Kédougou, the first thing they serve you is a dish called fonio. It's a grain called fonio. And fonio is an ancient grain. It is believed to be the oldest cultivated grain in Africa. It's been around 5,000 years. And fonio is not only a delicious grain, quite delicate, but it's also drought resistant. It's a grain that grows in poor soil. In addition to growing in poor soil, it regenerates the soil because it has deep roots that add nutrients to the soil. It's one of the fastest maturing grain. It grows in 2 months. It matures in 2 months. And that's why it's important, because those farmers, they kept to the grain because they know they can rely on it when the other crops fail to grow. That's what's important about fonio. They call it hungry rice. And so, as a naive chef from Senegal based in New York, I thought I could take this grain and introduce it to New Yorkers and then to the world, and it's going to become a world-class grain. This was my naive dream, not realizing that I had to create a value chain from like the farmers to the transformation to the supermarkets around New York. And this was the dreamer. And that dream got realized by collaborations. I knew I could make it happen by partnering with the right people, partnering with NGOs that are on the ground that have been working with the farmers, supporting the farmers. One wonderful NGO called SOS Sahel was there for me to deliver one. I want to recognize them. Remy is here, the director right here. And this was without this kind of collaboration, this wouldn't be able to happen. Once I got here, now I had to figure out the logistic on how to bring the grains to the market, how to package it. Found another collaboration with Woodland Food. I introduced them to the grain, said, hey, this is a grain that can make an impact. Let's figure out how to work it out. And this is what we did. We just started to package the grain, just a simple grain. We've worked with the small farmers in the cooperatives and packaged the grain, and went to Woodland Food, figured out the packaging, worked with like actually a great company called Pentagram to design the brand so that it would be beautiful and attractive once it gets to the shelves of the supermarket. And then went to Whole Foods, because Whole Foods claimed to be the one that would be the largest natural supermarket. It is Amazon, so you know they can do it. And Whole Foods were opening a big supermarket next to my restaurant in Harlem, Teranga. So I went to them and knocked at the door, and they said, we'll give it a chance. And they did give it a chance, but I had to make sure it sells. So I had myself going in the supermarket, doing food tasting, having people see how it cooks. And fonio happens to cook in 5 minutes, and fonio happened to be that grain when people try it, they want to try it again. And so that became the #1 selling grain at that Whole Foods in Harlem. And Whole Foods immediately started to add more supermarkets. And today I'm happy to say that we are distributed in all the Whole Foods in America. Thank you. Not only were distributed in all the Whole Foods in America, during the pandemic, people started to cook more at home and people wanted to cook more with food that was nutritious. Fonio happened to be a nutrition powerhouse. Fonio happened to be gluten-free. Fonio happened to have a low glycemic index. And we added more products, all inspired by the cuisines of West Africa. So we had Fonio pilafs now. We had Fonio pilafs, Fonio jollof, Fonio yassa, the wonderful lime and chili flavor from Senegal. We have dawa dawa Fonio, we call it Afro-funk, that's inspired by this locust bean from Nigeria. Because see, I wanted not only to go deeper in the history, get the grain that was unknown, underutilized orphans, but in addition to that, I wanted to transcend borders too. We have to think outside of our borders. It wasn't about Senegal, it was about the food culture of our origins. So this inspiration could come from Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Uganda. It didn't matter. We have so much to offer. And that's really what took me here. And the most important thing, as we succeeded in presenting Fonio, which was a challenge, we really wanted to brand it. We understood that those farmers had the products, but they didn't have access to market. So the challenge was to brand the product, and we branded it. Now that there's a demand for Fonio, we had to return and make the transformation, the supply right, otherwise we would have a disruption, and that was important. So we had to invest now on a mill that would process Fonio in a way that's really make it accessible and of the quality that the big food industry can have access to. So that was a challenge that we did. But we also wanted to make sure, it's very important, that we don't make Fonio a cash crop, because those farmers, they would just grow Fonio if this is what you buy. You know, you want to make sure you buy everything else that grows in rotation with Fonio. We don't want to impose to the farmers a new way of growing food. We want to just support them in what they've been doing for generations after generations. We make sure it's important to understand that Fonio and other crops are not commodities. Food is culture. And this is where we're coming from. We started to look into the crops that farmers were growing in rotation with Fonio, like the Bambara beans. They grow that season after season. This actual food system, the way to change it is to really return to the past. We don't need to reinvent the past. The farmers, they have mastered this way of growing. And this is my way of saying food is culture. And that was really what that this quest was about. Today we have Fonio chips in the market. They're a snack that you can have. This is also an innovation, but it's still in respect of that culture. It's in with the vision of bringing economic opportunity. And food is culture because food, again, like I said, is sharing, is sitting around the bowl, is bridging us, connecting us together. And food, of course, goes in pair with music, as music is also something that has transcended the border, that has connecting us. And it's my pleasure today to also introduce you to our next guest, who's a wonderful Senegalese-American singer who is bringing her take on music that was originally, you can find those roots in West Africa, jazz, R&B, pop, but she's taking it, she's going to have a wonderful presentation for you, and I'm looking forward to listening with you. So again, thank you, and make a change by trying Fonio and other crops, millet, sorghum, all of those, they need to be integrated in your market today, in your diet. On s'est vu, effectivement. On s'est vu. Exactement. And tell you about the menu that you're about to have today, which I didn't mention. But you have fonio, of course, a salad, fonio. You have jollof rice from Senegal, because some people think they make the best jollof, in Nigeria in particular. We have chicken suya, and yassa. Yassa is a wonderful caramelized onion and lime sauce. So I hope you enjoy, and you have the drinks as well, ginger and bissap and baobab. Give it up for Mariam.
How's everybody doing? I'm so excited to be here and perform for everybody. My name is Mariam. Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna put this right here. So I love to sing songs about love and about the world and how we can be better. So that's what I'm gonna do for you guys today. This first song is called Rogue. You're expecting to go to war to settle some old traditional score, and you don't even know what it is. Do you know what you're fighting for? Time to figure out what your book will be about. You're the free hand, you're the will. Will they catch you standing still? There's a reason, there's a rhyme. You were chosen for the times. You are able, you are strong. This is the last time. The past won't be the one to make your mind. You're choosing love and going rogue, rogue, rogue. You're going rogue, rogue, rogue. Ooh, there's much to learn and much to do. Ooh, dig deeper to accept your truth. Ooh, don't be confined by the web of what they say and do. Time to figure out what your book will be about. You're the free hand, you're the will. Will they catch you standing still? There's a reason, there's a rhyme. You were chosen for the times. You are able, you are strong. This is the last time. The past won't be the one to make your mind. You're choosing love and going rogue, rogue, rogue. You're going rogue, rogue, rogue. This is the last time. Ooh, 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 ooh. You're going rogue, rogue, rogue. You're going rogue, rogue, rogue. This time, not gonna lie to myself. This time, not gonna look the other way. This time, not gonna make the same mistakes. Gonna be the one who waits for the last time. The last time. The past won't be the one to make your mind. You're choosing love. You're choosing love. Choosing love. Oh, 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 oh. This is the last time. Ooh, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, oh, oh. We're gonna sing some more songs for you guys. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well? I can't hear myself, sorry. Can you hear me? I can hear better over here. The next song is called Be the Change. I'm gonna need your participation, so clap with me. Do, 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 do. will make a better world. Life is not a fairy tale, no, not for boys and girls. You got to stop the talking, got to get down. Ooh, stop the talking, got to get down. Intentions only take you far when you're on the road. Don't wait around for people to do what you should do. You got to stop the talking, got to get down. Ooh, stop the talking, got to get down. So be the change, yeah, be the shelter. So be the one who's standing up when they're looking at you, yeah. Be the change, be the shelter. Don't be tomorrow waiting for that day to pass you. A heavy heart can slow you down when you're not aware. Clear the spaces in your mind, stop to breathe the air. Lay a brick day by day, build your house of love. Show that there's a better way to help us rise above. You got to stop the talking, got to get down. Ooh, stop the talking, got to get down. So be the change, yeah, be the shelter. So be the one who's standing up when they're looking at you, yeah. Be the change, be the shelter. Don't be tomorrow waiting for that day to pass you. Come on. Do 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 do. If not now, then when? Ba-ba. Just begin. Do 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 do. If not now, then when? Ba-ba. I'm glad you guys are clapping. Da 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 ooh da 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 da. Ba da 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 ooh da 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 da. So stay woke, they's creeping. They gon' find you all, gon' catch you creeping. Oh, now stay woke, baby's creeping. So don't you close your eyes. So be the change, yeah, be the shelter. So be the one who's standing up when they're looking at you, yeah. Be the change, yeah, be the shelter. Don't be tomorrow waiting for that day to pass you. Don't be tomorrow waiting. Don't be tomorrow waiting. Don't be tomorrow waiting. Come on, repeat after me. When I say don't be tomorrow waiting, you say don't be tomorrow waiting. 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 The next song is called The Kids Are Not Fine. So the next song is called The Kids Are Not Fine, and it basically just paints a picture of the world that it seems like where it's going. This is the last ship to Mars. We've been left behind to start. We're no longer seen as human. We're no longer fighting for freedom. History's in disgrace. There's no soul there to trace. We turned our backs on our mother. We lost all trust in our father. Point a finger at you, yeah. Point a finger back to why are we so blind to see that the ones we hurt are you and me? Yeah, sealed lips, sink ships, no tip, no drip, got no money, end of line. The kids, they're not fine. Sealed lips, sink ships, where the view from up there. We're unlucky, they're unfair. Ooh, we were here, we saw it coming. Only cared while we were running. Point a finger at you, yeah. Point a finger back to why are we too blind to see that the ones we hurt are you and me, yeah. Sealed lips, sink ships, no tip, no drip, got no money, end of line. The kids, they're not fine. Sealed lips, sink ships, no tip, no drip, got no money, end of line. The kids, they're not fine. I have one more song to sing for you guys. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Mariam. This is Chad on the keys, and this is Eric on the guitar. The last song I'm gonna sing for you guys is called Love Now, because it's urgent. I wrote all these songs hoping that they can activate people to do better in life. So this is the activation session, kind of. Yeah. Been around the world, travel endlessly. People hurting people is all I ever see. Abuse of authority is getting hard to breathe. When they speak of equality, it's getting hard to believe. What would it take for us to love now? What would it take to let our guards down? I know we can change, 'cause we know how. What would it take for us to love now? To love now, to love now, to love now. To love now, to love now. What would it take for us to love now? Held back by our anger, shackled by our pain, but we can find our glory, yeah. We can break these chains. The world is still ours. this we can proclaim. All we got is each other, yeah. All we got is today. What would it take for us to love now? What would it take to let our guards down? It isn't too late, I know we know how. What would it take for us to love now? To love now, to love now, to love now. Ooh. To love now, to love now. What would it take for us to love now? To love now. Ooh, ooh, yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you so much for having me, and let's promote a better future. Thank you.
Sorry, for a moment I forgot I was a moderator. I was so caught up in that song. It was so beautiful, and the lyrics as well. I found a lot of inspiration, which Ruth, you said this morning. That's what we're looking for from this event. So really thank you to Mariam and to Chef Pierre for the inspiration that you brought to this discussion. Thank you so much. And the other objective, which I outlined, was to really put Africa on the agenda of the Climate Week. And we still need your help with that. And I'm hoping that, as a follow-up from this event through the communications, and we will actually be going outside now to the foyer, where we will be having lunch from Chef Pierre's restaurant and actually experience what he talked to us about. And in that moment, maybe we can also have some conversations to form partnerships to get these messages across to the wider community here in New York. So that's the objective. And I would also like to say that, while you have lunch, you'll notice some photos in the foyer as well. These photos have been especially brought to you from the ICRA project in Zambia. So you can actually see what we are actually doing, what ICRA is actually doing in the field. And there are explanations as well. And if you have more questions, come to the ICRA director and ICRA team, and you can ask them. And let's start collaborations going, because that's what's going to change. I don't have anything else to add as the moderator. Thank you for being for such a nice audience. I hope you found this interesting and useful. And I would also like to thank the ICRA team, Anna Maria, of course, Reese, Amy, Allison, and Julian. Where are you? There, Julian and Carolina. Carolina is outside. So this has been the fantastic team who's actually been working tirelessly behind the scenes for several months now, putting this together. So thank you so much for the hard work, and thank you to the co-organizers together with ICRA, Columbia Climate School, and IRI, and the World Bank for bringing us together and giving us this opportunity to put Africa high up on the agenda for the Climate Week. Thank you.